Welcome to Built with Purpose. I am Chris Fay, and this is the show where vision meets execution and leadership leaves a legacy. From design studios to innovation hubs and product lines to skylines, we meet the people building more than great companies. They're creating culture, driving impact, and shaping what's next. These are the stories and strategies behind how the world gets built with purpose.
Everybody, welcome to Built with Purpose. Today is a pretty cool episode of Between the Builds. As you know, this is our chance to reflect back, but what's actually interesting is we took a month off. The month of July, I decided just to take some time off. We have a bunch of stuff going on in the business, wanting to spend some time with family and travel a little bit, and then just really kind of reset. And so that's what we did. And I think, honestly, that's something that all of us should be thinking about, as a leader. Whether you're leading a company, teams, or whatever, are you giving yourself those intentional breaks? Are you taking some time to be away from the computer, to be away from work, and reflecting back on what's most important, and then resetting yourself for that next evolution? So anyway, that's a bit of what we did in July. We probably should have done a better job of announcing it out to listeners. I'm sure the thousands and thousands of you have been missing my podcast. Just kidding, but no, seriously. But we're kicking back off this new season, this new year, and wanted to really just kind of start with a conversation around our health. Our last guest we had was Dr. Grant Zarzour, a great buddy of mine. I've known him for a number of years now. Has started a longevity company called Sperity Health. They're doing a really cool kind of B2B model as far as helping executives and senior leaders and individuals and employees as well really take control of their health. And so, I was reflecting back on the conversation, and then honestly, we've had a couple situations here through family and friends, and even inside of our company, where this health thing becomes a much bigger topic. And sometimes we all need a little kick in the butt, or something to call us to action to take those next steps. And so that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. One of the things that Grant was saying, he had this quote that says, "When you're faced with your own mortality, you tend to make changes." And this is actually something that happened inside of our organization. Is we have a longtime employee, a great member of our family and inside of the business, get diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And it's a tough diagnosis. He just started going through chemo. We're obviously kind of rallying around him, but when you're faced with mortality, this mortality, you're faced with something that has a chance of potentially taking your life. All of a sudden, you begin to reflect back on, what have you done throughout your life? What could you have done differently? And what are you going to do differently going forward? Similarly, my dad, who's an avid listener of Built with Purpose. So, hey, Dad, he had esophageal cancer a number of years ago, and busy executive, traveling a lot. He was healthy and playing a lot of tennis, but also staying up late at night, working. Business dinners, just all the things that can contribute to maybe an unhealthy lifestyle. After his esophageal diagnosis and treatment, and fortunately he's 100% cured, and I think more than 5 years removed from that surgery and diagnosis, like his outlook on life is so much different. So I just wonder sometimes, why does it take facing your own mortality for us to begin making a change in our lives? And so that was one of the things I was coming back and thinking about here. And one of the other quotes that Grant said was, you're making all this money, you're doing all this stuff, but what's it worth if you can't spend it or enjoy it because you're unhealthy? And so the analogy I tend to think about is our own businesses. Like think about the company that you work for. You have a game plan, you have a vision of where you want to take that business or that team or that church or that organization. We all create visions. And then we come back down into, well, in order to achieve that vision, what do I need to be doing, this year, this quarter, this week, or today in order to achieve that vision and that mission? And so it seems so commonplace for us to think about that in the business world. Or in our family. Okay, my son, I want to make sure he gets in a good college. So in order for him to get in a good college, what does he need to be doing now, or this year, or this quarter, or this month, or this week in order to prepare himself for college? Well, we need to be reading, we need to be studying, we need to be getting our nonprofit hours in. I want him to get some work experience. It just seems so natural for us in our day-to-day lives with how we run our families and our businesses and others to have vision, plans, and to be doing things today that are ultimately going to yield that long-term success. But it surprises me how few people actually do that with their personal health. Nobody wants to say, I want to die early. I want to feel like crap the last number of years of my life. I want to have cancer. I want to be in the hospital. I want to not be able to support my family. I don't want to see my kids graduate or my grandkids grow up. Nobody says that. If you ask any of us today, like, what's like, take me to your 80th birthday. What are you looking like your 80th birthday? Everybody would say, man, I'd love to be healthy. I'd love to, be there to see my family. I'd love to, be mobile. I don't want to go through, terminal disease. I don't want to live in the hospital. I don't want to feel like crap. I don't want to be overweight. That's probably what all of us would say. But yet, as we take a step back, so few of us, well, I don't say so few of us, but many of us are unwilling to make the changes today that are ultimately going to yield that success long term. And so I read this, my wife and I and family are starting to read this new devotional. It's a 90-day devotion. It's called Bulletproof Family by Adam Davis and Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. And it's been pretty cool. We've been reading it each night. And so this was actually last night. So I'm preparing for today. This was last night. So let me just read this to you. So when you study elite operations in either military service or working as first responders, there's something they all have in common. They practice the fundamentals until those fundamentals become second nature. Former University of Alabama head coach Nick Saban once said, "Don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong." What makes championship athletes and the elite is that they never abandon the pursuit of excellence in the fundamentals. So you start thinking about the fundamentals. What are the fundamentals in athletics? Well, if you're playing football, right, you've got to make sure you know how to tackle or catch or run or pivot. You want to be in shape. And so those are the fundamentals that we practice every day. I think about, we run a sales organization. What are the fundamentals of sales? Well, you've got to know what you're selling, right? So you have to have active learning and knowledge of what you're selling and the market and the industry. You have to just do the activity. You got to pick up the phone. You got to go meet with people. You got to have conversations. You got to send emails. And ultimately that yields you success in sales over time. So if you go forward and you're like, all right, well, in order for me to live a great life and see my grandkids graduate from college or get married, and in order for me to have the highest chances of not facing terminal illness and living my very best life, what we need to do is we need to be focused on the fundamentals today. You can't live till you're 70 and then all of a sudden try and make change and decide that you're going to now live till you're 90 years old. The best thing that we can do is start taking action on our lives today. Similarly, in a business, if you lay out a new vision of where you want to go, what's the first thing that you need to do to start taking action to achieve that vision today? And that's the same thing here. And it always comes back to the fundamentals. So that devotion was talking about what are the fundamentals that we need to have in our family, and how love, the word love and the act of love is a foundation that we need to have inside of our families. And so if you take that same analogy over into our health, what are the fundamentals that we need to be doing today in order to set ourselves up for success long term? And so Grant was giving us some very tactical advice on things that we can do. The first thing is just know where you're at, right? Pretty much all of us have health insurance. Health insurance pays for an annual physical, a preventative care physical every year. You would be amazed at how many people don't go get their annual physical. I've had people that I know that have been diagnosed with cancer, leukemia, all these diseases that have popped up. And you said, when's the last time you got a physical? Well, it's been a couple of years. The physical is the number one thing that all of us can be doing in order to make sure that we're tracking our numbers, seeing where things are. And then Grant starts adding that there's a number of other markers that you can begin to start tracking. He recommends a full body MRI, recommends like a clearly exam of your heart, and a number of things just to understand where you are today. So one fundamental is just know your numbers, right? If you're trying to grow a business or trying to grow a team, you got to know your numbers. All right. Well, I want to be a $100 million a year firm. I'm a $20 million a year firm today. You're not going to know where you're going unless you know where you are today. So that's kind of the first step, is knowing where you are. And then, I think one of the things that Grant talked about is, you don't necessarily have to go from 0 to 100 overnight. What happens at New Year's? Well, at New Year's, everybody makes these New Year's resolutions, and they're so excited. I'm gonna stop eating fried foods. I'm gonna cut back on my complex my carbohydrates. I'm gonna work out 7 days a week. I'm gonna be this perfect beacon of health. And what happens is they get into January, they start taking action, and those habits fall off because they've tried to take too dramatic of an action. So if you come back and you start thinking about the fundamentals, if you get your numbers, you get your preventative care physical, you go get your various markers, maybe consider a full body MRI. I did one down at Pernuvo down in the Atlanta marketplace. It was a really cool experience for me. I've done the Clearly exam of my heart and a few other kind of genomic testing. So once you have your foundation, what are the fundamentals? What's just the one or two thing that you can do tomorrow or today to begin taking action? Is it one step forward in your diet? Is it getting out and walking? Is it adding a wearable so that you have some sort of insights into your sleep and your data? So I think as we start thinking about the fundamentals, we just need to boil this down. We don't need to boil the ocean at one time. We don't need to go from 0 to 100 overnight. We just need to begin taking incremental steps to drive improvement into our lives, just like we would in our businesses or our families or for our kids. And what do we know if we think about how long it takes to develop a habit? It takes 66 days for us to develop a habit. So if you start doing something today, you're more than 2 months away from that actually becoming a habit. So what is one or two new habits that you can build in your life to improve your health over the next 66 days? And once you develop those habits, you can then start thinking about everything else. So maybe, again, it's exercising. Maybe it's how you eat. Maybe it's cutting back the number of days on alcohol. It's increasing your water intake. It's going to get your measurables. So great conversation. This is one of the most important things. We can talk about family. We can talk about fun. We can talk about business and leadership and teams. If you're not healthy and you can't enjoy it, it doesn't matter. So with that, I hope you all have an awesome day. Looking forward to the season ahead, and enjoy. Continue to build with purpose. See you. Okay, thanks for joining me on Built with Purpose. If you have enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more bold leaders find the show. For resources and show notes, visit our website and connect with me, Chris Fay, on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep building great companies, cultures, and legacies with purpose.